Hi, so welcome to this week's video. We're going to be making some leek and bacon tartlets. So we're going to show you a really good technique for making some individual quiches. Now the recipe that you've got is for making 12, and because I'm just demonstrating, I'm going to make 6. So you'll notice I have slightly less ingredients when we come to that stage, but you're going to be making hopefully 12, or you can halve them if you want to, or double them if you're making them for a party or guests. I was just thinking I was going to say guests, but at the moment we have to be careful with our numbers, don't we? So I'll go through the ingredients first of all, and then we're going to prepare the pastry first. So we're making our own homemade shortcrust pastry. That needs to go into the fridge for about half an hour or so to rest. You can leave it for longer if you want to, and just bring it out and leave it to room temperature before you start to roll it. While we do the first part of the video for the pastry, we're also going to cook the bacon and the leeks and get those prepared. So I'll demonstrate that for you. So we're going to be using some plain flour. We have some eggs, some milk and some butter. We're also going to be using some leeks, and we're going to use further eggs for the topping as well, and then we've got some cheddar cheese and some bacon. Obviously you can change the filling for these, so if you're vegetarian you can do cheese and onion, cheese and tomato. There's lots and lots of different options, but we're going to start off by preparing our tin. So I have a 12-hole muffin tin here. I'm going to use 6 of them for mine, so like I said, I'm halving the recipe, but you're going to grease all 12 of these. You can use butter. I'm using some release spray. Get this in spray or liquid form, so I'm just going to put a small amount into the bottom of each of these, and then I'm going to use my pastry brush just to go all the way around the bottom and the sides so that pastry doesn't stick. And we just go all the way around and up the edges. So make sure you grease it really well so they're easier to take out the tin. A good tip is to let them cool down for about 10 to 15 minutes. If you try and take them out when they're warm, then they sort of stick to the tin and they can crumble slightly. So just give them that time to cool and come away from the edge, and then you get that lovely shape of the shell. So just go all the way around, up those sides as well. And like I said, you're going to be doing 12 of these, so just keep going until you've filled the whole tin. And then I'm just going to move that to one side so there's some more space over here. So you can keep greasing your other 6 on there. Okay, so that's your tin prepared, and now we're going to come on to making the pastry so that we can cover that in cling film and pop that into the fridge for about half an hour. So I'm using a nice clear glass bowl. Any mixing bowl is fine for this one. When you're making pastry, it's always really good to keep things as cold as possible. So just taking the butter out of the fridge, and you can run your hands under the cold water if you need to, just to keep them cool, or if it's a nice cold day then don't worry too much. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to rub our flour and our butter together. So we're going to measure out our flour, and that is plain flour we're using. So make sure your scales are on 0 and we're using grams. Now you're using 250 grams. I'm just going to measure 125 on mine. So yours will look twice the size. So 250 for yours. And I'm just using 125 because I'm halving mine. So if you're just making 6, you'll be using the same measurements as I am. And then just pop your plain flour straight into the bowl, and then we're going to measure our butter. So for our butter, we're using a nice block butter. Again, you're going to be using 125 grams, and I'm going to halve that, so just over 60 grams for mine. And then we're going to cut that into small cubes and just use the breadcrumb method to use our fingertips and combine the two together. So again, check your scales are on 0 and they're still on grams. And then what you want to do is just slice it into slightly smaller pieces. You can also grate cold butter in, so some people find it easier to grate the butter in at this stage. And some people say actually if you grate it and then freeze the butter to keep it really cold until you need it. And then just wrap your butter back up and either return it straight to the fridge or pop it to one side. and then have your hands facing up to the ceiling rather than downwards, and you're just going to take your finger and your thumb and just gently squeeze the butter and the flour together so it starts to look a little bit like breadcrumbs. So just combine those two and just keep moving it around the bowl so that you get rid of any of those big lumps of butter. So just keep going on there for a couple of minutes, and then we're going to be adding egg and milk to combine this together to make a dough, and we'll roll it into a ball, wrap it up and pop it in the fridge for half an hour. That just helps it to firm up, and it helps it when you want to keep its shape. So just keep moving around, just keep squeezing it all together. Your hands will probably be quite messy at this point, but you'll give them a good wash once you've finished preparing the pastry. And then we're going to move on to getting our leeks and our bacon ready. And we'll cook those now so that while your pastry is chilling, your bacon and your leeks have time to cool down as well. So it's a good idea to put a cold filling into your pastry cases. If you put it in when it's too warm, then it can cause the butter in the pastry to melt, and then it will lose its shape when it's cooking, and it can give it a bit of a soggy bottom. So you don't need to preheat your oven just yet because we've got half an hour of resting, but we'll do that at the start of the second video. And just keep moving it round, and you can give your bowl a gentle shake and any big lumps of butter will come to the top. And you're just looking for fine breadcrumbs, so we don't want any big lumps of butter in there. Just keep turning that round. Just another minute, then that will be there. Just a couple of larger lumps that I want to make a little bit smaller. If you have lumps that stick together, they tend to melt in the pastry. Again, that can cause the soggy bottom. Another good tip when you're cooking these, when you put your oven on to preheat, pop a heavy empty baking tray in there, and then when your muffin tin is ready and it's filled with your lovely cases and your pastry, pop it straight onto the hot tin, and that will help you just to sort of get a nice crisp pastry bottom. Right, that's almost there, so just give it a final wiggle round just to make sure there are no lumps coming to the top. Then rub your hands together so that any of that butter and flour goes into the bowl and you don't lose any of that lovely pastry mixture. And then I'm just going to give them a little rinse, so I'm just going to disappear off screen, wash those before we measure out our egg and our milk. Okay. So we're going to add our liquid now. This is what's going to help form it together in a ball. Now you can mix this with your hands. I'm going to use a wooden spoon, and then I'm going to bring it together into a dough. So I'm going to add the liquid first of all. Now you're going to be using a whole egg. I'm going to be using half. So I'm going to measure in here first and just use half. So crack your egg, and then like I said, I'm going to whisk this and use half of it. You're going to use the whole one. And then we're going to measure out our milk. You will have 60 millilitres, and I'm just going to use 30 on here. So I'm just going to have a look on my measuring jug to see how many millilitres my whole egg will be. You can put your whole egg straight in now, and I'm going to just pour half of that in there. And then for the milk, you're going to use 60 millilitres, and that's going to go straight into the bowl, and I'm going to use 30. And then we can adjust if we need to. So if you find your mixture's a little bit dry and crumbly, we'll add a little bit more milk, a little drop more milk. And if it's too sticky, we just add a very small amount of flour. So you want to start mixing that all together, and it comes together quite quickly. And then once it gets really, really lumpy, we're going to pop our hands in and get it into a ball. Now I'm going to add a smidgen of flour to the outside, just to make sure that's not too sticky. Sometimes when you're sort of halving an egg, it can be a little bit difficult to get the exact amount in there that you want. Now, if you get your hands in, make sure you take any mixture off the spoon, because you don't want to lose any of that lovely pastry. and we're just looking to squeeze it together into a ball. Now we don't need to knead our pastry, we're just going to gather it all together into a circle, ready to wrap into some cling film, and then we're going to pop it in to chill in the fridge. So yours will be twice the size of mine because I've halved everything for this one. So I'm just making 6 today. And then just squeeze everything together and just go around the bowl, gather everything up. And it should be reasonably soft, so not sticking to your hands, but not dry and crumbly. So you should be able to gather it nicely into a ball and just roll it around so it's lovely and smooth. So you should just have a nice ball of dough. And then we're just going to take some cling film. And just roll it round so it's completely sealed. And then all I'd like you to do is just pop that in the fridge for about 30 minutes. And that will help to firm up. Now I'm just going to move this bowl out of the way so you can see better. Okay, now we're going to prepare our bacon and our leeks. And we're going to get them cooking so we can get them nice and cool. Now you're going to be using a whole leek, and I'm going to use half for this recipe. So what we want to do is we want to make sure we clean the leek. So the first thing you want to do is you want to just check the outside layer, and then you want to give it a good rinse. We're going to then top and tail, and we're just going to dice our leeks down nice and finely. So first of all, just take it to the sink, give it a nice wash on the outside. So I'll just disappear and do that with this one. Just make sure that you go all around the edge and you sort of get into the leek as well there. And then it'll be nice and clean. What you want to do is take your knife pointing downwards. You can use a butter knife for this. Just take the end, so the roots, like the little hairs on the end there. And then the same with the top. So you've still got most of the leek left. Now I'm only using half, so I'm going to cut that in the middle. You're going to dice the whole one there. And then what you want to do is I cut it into small circles first of all, then we're going to make it even smaller, and we're going to dice it into little pieces so you have little bites going right the way through. We're going to do the same with our bacon in a moment, and then we're just going to cook those in a little butter until they're lovely and golden and cooked through, and then we're going to pop them in a bowl and just let them go nice and cold. So just dice them nice and small. Keep watching your fingers and your thumbs all the time. And like I said, a butter knife will be strong enough to slice these and dice them. So I slice them into circles, then dice them into nice small pieces. You can swap, so if you don't like leeks, you can use spring onion, works really nicely in here as well. You could use some mushrooms. You could use some tomato. If you want to just do cheese and tomato, you could do those perfectly well. You can use vegetarian or vegan bacon if you wanted to. That's it. So we're just going to prepare everything first of all. So I've got half a leek. You'll carry on with your whole leek. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pop a little bit of butter into a pan. Now again, I've got this over here so I can show you nice and close. And then we're just going to put a small amount of butter into the bottom of the pan. And ask a grown-up to help you. You want to just heat this up to melt it. So I'm going to just plug this one in here. Now, like I've said to those of you before, this one gets really hot. So I'm just going to keep an eye on the heat and just melt that butter down. And then we're going to pop the leeks in. And then I'm going to turn the board over and we're going to dice up some of our bacon. So you're using 200 grams. I'm going to use 100 grams of bacon, which I'm going to dice up and put in here. But you always want to use either a new chopping board or the other side of your chopping board. And just keep an eye on your butter. And we just want to melt that down. You can use fry light if you want to spray some fry light on there as well. Now I'm going to cook the two together to soften them. Then we're just going to leave them to cool down. That's it, so that's starting to melt nicely now. And then the bacon's there, ready. Make sure you just keep your surface nice and clean, so I'm just going to move those shells from earlier on. Like can hear that starting to sizzle, so the butter's nearly melted. I'm going to pop the leeks in, and then while the leeks are starting to soften, I'm going to get the bacon chopped and add that in there as well. So again, we're going to just dice the bacon so it's in nice small pieces. So I'm going to pop those leeks in, and then I'm going to turn over the board, and I'm going to take my bacon and dice that nicely. So you can ask somebody to keep an eye on the pan if you're one of the younger chefs, and just keep moving those around carefully. Turn my board over, and then I'm going to take the bacon. Hands are slippery from the leeks. Let's see if this will open that way. I'll cut down there. And I'm just going to take my bacon. And then I'm just going to slice that nice and thinly. You can use scissors, so if you prefer to cut your bacon with cooking scissors, that's absolutely fine. Every now and again, just give those leeks a little stir. I'm just keeping an eye, I can hear those sizzling away, and just dice that bacon. And we're just going to soften that and reduce that down. I'm just removing some of the rind from the outside as well, so I'm just going to take that outside layer of rind off. So you can use bacon medallions if you want to, if you're not a fan of the rind. And just dice that, and I'm going to pop that in as I go so that can start sizzling away with the leeks. So slice it to start with, and then like you did with your leeks, nice small pieces that you're going to dice up there. And then we're just going to soften them for a few minutes before popping them into a bowl and letting them cool down. So when you can hear it really sizzling, just reduce the heat down slightly. And then add all that lovely diced bacon. You'll start to get that lovely smell of the leeks and the butter wafting up from the pan. But like I said, this is a really good recipe because you can change the filling to suit. Once you've got the method, it's like making little individual quiches. So you can personalise them, you can do salmon and broccoli. And then because you've been touching meat, make sure you give your hands a wash as well. So I'm just going to discard that and give my hands a wash before stirring. And then we just want them to go nice and soft. Excuse me. Just be careful, make sure you either have an adult with you supervising, or they can take charge of this part if you like. And just keep moving them around so they don't stick. And we just want to get a little bit of colour on them, just make sure that bacon is lightly cooked there. And it's just going to make those leeks go lovely and soft. So just keep moving them around. Excuse me, inhale with some of the tea. And then we're just going to let them go cold. So by the time your pastry is finished and it's got just over 20 minutes left in the fridge for chilling time, these will be nice and cold. And then when you come to the second part of the video, we're going to roll and shape your pastry cases and create the filling. Now these will only take about 20 minutes to bake in the oven. Little seasoning. So when we make the main, we're going to have the bacon and the leeks, we're going to add some grated cheese and some eggs, and then just a little salt and pepper just for some seasoning. So I'm just going to let that keep softening down now. And then I'm just going to have a little bowl ready so that they can cool down. It'll help to cool them down a lot quicker than keeping them in the pan. And they just need another couple of minutes just to get that leeks lovely and soft and a little bit of colour on that bacon in there. So they're almost there. And they're just drinking up all that lovely butter as well. So while that's simmering for a moment, we're just going to get our cheese ready. So what we're going to do is we're just going to grate up. Now again, you're going to be using 100 grams of cheddar cheese. I'm going to be using 50. So just weigh out your cheese, 0 grams, 100 grams of cheddar, or a nice hard block. I'm going to use 50 grams, so I'm going to halve that there. And then very carefully, we're just going to grate that in a bowl so that's ready to go later on without waiting for anything. Okay. So again, the large side of the grater, just give that a gentle stir, and just downwards. You don't need to go up and down, just very carefully down on the grater. You can use a box grater or a rotary grater that you turn with a handle. They're very good, particularly for the younger chefs. Just keep watching your finger and your thumb and just have this ready. It's always good to have all your ingredients prepped and ready on the side. It saves you a little bit of time later on as well. Keep an eye on those leeks and bacon, which are nearly ready. And then just keep grating that down. That's lovely. Okay, so when it comes to later on, you're going to be using 4 eggs. I'm going to have 2 going into mine. So I've got the 2 eggs ready there. We've got our grated cheese, and then we're going to have our lovely bacon and leeks ready in just a moment. Keep some flour to hand because it's a good idea to flour the board when you're rolling, so it just stops it from sticking. And then all of the equipment that we've used, it's a good idea just to clear that away so you've got a nice clean surface for rolling and shaping up that pastry. So this is going to come off the heat in just a moment. And then things like your cling film you won't need, so that one can go away. Anything that you've weighed and measured in, so your scales, your measuring jug, they can go away. And your leeks, any butter, that can go back into the fridge as well, so you won't need those for now. So just pop those away, just to keep it nice and cool. Grate as you like. Grate how you're always finished with as well. And any leftover bacon, that can go back into the fridge. So just make sure you wrap that and chill that. That way you're nice and organised. Milk we're finished with as well. And our cheese. Okay, now by this stage you should find that your leeks are lovely and soft and your bacon's got just a little bit of colour on there. It will obviously keep cooking while it's in the oven as well. So keep your flour out, make sure you keep out your eggs. You're going to have 4, I've got 2. Your grated cheese, and then you're going to have a rolling pin to hand. It's always handy to have a clean knife to the side just in case you need to trim any of the pastry cases, but you won't need the work mat and the board. We're going to roll directly onto the work surface, so we'll clear that down as well. Now, very carefully, turn off the heat, or ask your grown-up to turn the heat off for you. And then, very carefully, just pop your bacon and your leeks in here to cool down. Keep an eye on your timer for your pastry. So, mine has got about 15 minutes left, by which point the bacon should have cooled down really nicely. And then in the second part of the video, we're going to roll the pastry cases and we're going to create that lovely filling using your bacon and leeks, or if you've changed for other toppings, that's absolutely fine. Your grated cheese, your 2 eggs, have a rolling pin ready, and then just make sure you give your surface a nice wipe down. So remove any grated cheese or anything dry first, give it a nice clean. And then if you would like, you can use a round cutter to cut out your pastry cases, so a nice large one, or alternatively you can roll them into golf balls, and I'll show you how we can roll those out into circles. So leave that to chill for now, and I will see you again in about 15 minutes. Thank you.